Hi, I'm Paul Guppy. I'm Senior Researcher at the Washington Policy Center, and this is our regular update of both important issues that we're tracking that are important to the people of our state. I'm also going to add a little bit of commentary about the grand events that are happening in our nation's politics, because that affects us here in Washington as well, and then give an update on our exciting summer event series that we're having and our fall dinners that are coming up. So we have a lot of public events, and I want to make sure that I'm communicating those. But first, on the matter of issues, again, a national issue that has could affect us here in Washington State is many of our supporters know that Washington Policy Center is one of the leading voices in defending the free market, competitive pricing, access to affordable housing, the rental market, the real estate market. And we were successful in the last legislative session in defeating a bill that would have imposed rent control in our state. That was HB 2114. Mark Harmsworth on our staff wrote an analysis of that bill. He testified against the bill, and the bill was defeated. It passed in the House, which was a little concerning, but that bill to impose rent control in Washington State died in a Senate committee. Again, part of the information that we had provided to lawmakers to show the negative impact that that idea would have on our state. So that was a success. But now we see that the Biden administration has announced its own rent control proposal, which would apply to all 50 states. And again, we are jumping on top of this. So we are pointing out that what he calls rent stabilization should really be called the Urban Decay Enhancement Act. Rent control is a price control, as we continually point out. And the reason that it has failed in San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, virtually every jurisdiction where it's been tried in the last 70 years, rent control always has the same effect. It denies people who are looking for a unit access to affordable housing, because people who are in rent-controlled units tend not to want to move, but primarily it encourages landlords to withdraw supply. They don't support their buildings, they can't afford it, and they certainly don't provide new rental units. We have pointed out all of those problems. So what can be done regarding affordable housing in our state? Again, we are about practical solutions, but we're also about trying to get policymakers to recognize their own role in creating social problems. So we start with saying, well, if state lawmakers didn't increase the property tax so much, it would make all of housing in the state more affordable. Seattle locally is about to impose a $1.5 billion property tax increase to pay for transportation and roads. That's the largest tax increase the city has ever proposed. And again, it hits right on property. We dispel the idea that renters do not pay property tax. That's false. Of course, the cost of the taxes the owner has to pay are incorporated into the rent. And then the other thing that we point out is that government should recognize its own regulatory role in increasing the cost of new housing. So taxes and regulations just to build in Washington State add at least $40,000 to the retail price of a new home. That's also the cost that's built into every rental unit. And then on top of that, the Growth Management Act restricts access to buildable land. The Growth Management Act has been in place since the early 1990s. The boundaries have never been seriously adjusted. We think it should be revisited to take account of normal growth that's happening in our state. So we're going to continue to push for affordable housing, but always from a point of view of leveraging free market forces and, of course, discouraging top-down price controls like rent control. Another issue that we're looking at is Elizabeth New on our staff has been tracking the latest in insurance trends, the cost of health care, and what's coming up on the ballot. She shared on our blog, she posted a report saying that earlier in July, she was listening to a podcast from the Insurance Commissioner's Office called OIC Answers Questions on Insurance. It shows how we spend our time here at Washington Policy Center listening to dry, wonky presentations from state agencies. But the reason she listened to it is because this insurance official was attacking a form of paying health bills called healthcare sharing ministries. These are very popular all across the country. It's not formal insurance. So therefore, you can see the jealousy that the Insurance Commissioner's Office has, because they have no authority to regulate this form of payment. And yet this is extremely popular. 1.7 million people are part of these plans. They voluntarily pay into a pool, and then when they have medical bills, the pool pays their medical bills. It's very successful. It's market-oriented. It's based on trust. And the number one advantage that it has, as I mentioned, is that it's voluntary. And if there is one thing that state regulators can't stand, is when people make decisions for their own lives without checking with the government first. So naturally, the insurance commissioner was attacking this form of healthcare bill payment and saying that people shouldn't be fooled, you shouldn't get into it. But then what Elizabeth points out is, but the insurance commissioner is simply attacking his own competition, because the state of Washington runs its own insurance company, and they just expanded into long-term health care based on a program that the legislature created. It imposes, as most people know, a new payroll tax of 58 cents for every $100 that everybody earns, with no income cap. And this is an entitlement program that's just gotten started in the last few years. It's already facing financial problems, but most importantly, it is facing political pushback from the people of our state. So initially what Elizabeth sees is, oh, this is not useful public information from a neutral state official. This is a state official in the insurance commissioner's office who is trying to degrade their own competition, because Washington state is in the business too. All of this will be resolved coming up in the November ballot, when there's an initiative to repeal the long-term care tax. It's one of 4 initiatives on the ballot, and Washington Policy Center has strongly encouraged that this program be repealed. It's unpopular, it's fiscally unworkable, but again, it violates that principle that's so important to us, and that is allowing people to make decisions in their own lives, for their own families, with their own money, instead of growing government as a business, in this case insurance, to compete against their own citizens. So we're hopeful that that will come out successfully in November. We are also getting engaged in the other 3 initiatives that are on the ballot. We will be producing a citizen's guide on each one and giving those wide publication across the state, primarily informing media and people in the community about what these initiatives mean. And to summarize, the ballot initiatives are the one on long-term care insurance that I just mentioned, and then that's Initiative 2124. And then the others are Initiative 1066. That's the one that was just put out a month or 2 ago in order to repeal the the ban on natural gas. And then the others are Initiative 2109 to repeal the capital gains income tax, and Initiative 2117 to repeal the energy carbon tax. All 4 of those look like they may be headed for passage. But in any case, we are about informing the public as to what they mean. In each case, it is rolling back cost and expense, new taxes, higher energy costs, higher price of gas that are artificially imposed by the state of Washington. These are all policy choices that make life less affordable in our state, that contribute to inflation. So we're about solid public policy that makes people's lives better. And so it's clear that removing these extra costs would help everybody in our state. Next, I mentioned that I would touch on national politics. So grand events are happening with President Biden leading the race. The Democrats are now shifting to supporting Kamala Harris. There have been lots of national commentary on that, and that's not something that Washington Policy Center needs to get involved in, and that's not our area of expertise. But what we do track is how that will affect dynamics in our state. So one thing we notice is fairly obvious. Democrats are now enthusiastic and motivated about their national candidate. It has removed the division and questioning about whether President Biden's health was up to running again. That is all resolved. But as one of our Washington Policy Center analysts put it, is that she wondered, well, where will the Democrats feel in a month or 2 when the Kamala Harris sugar high has worn off a little bit? We think that all of that will settle down. The Democrats will have their convention, and they will convey a message directly to the people that is their strongest case for winning the presidency. Again, we're looking at how it affects people in our state. So we think that this will, that Trump can, the polls show that he continues to have growing support among Black voters and Hispanic voters. That could drive enthusiasm in our state in certain legislative districts. We're thinking particularly in districts in Eastern Washington near Yakima, District 14, District 17, District 18. Those all have fairly large Hispanic populations, and Republicans are making a real pitch to try to win those districts and improve their positioning in Olympia. We'll see how that plays out, but the dynamic of the national race and the enthusiasm that the Trump-Vance ticket is developing among minority voters could have an effect in our state as well. And the other thing that we noticed is that because on the Democrat side, there was not much of a competitive primary at the national level, that they may have a legacy from that. So one political observer mentioned that primaries are like the immune system in politics. They're like the training ground that allows a political party to identify the weaknesses of certain candidates, to test them on the national stage. And this year, that entire process was passed by the Democrats. And so now Vice President Harris is untested when it comes to competing in a primary, and she's jumping right into the national election. We'll see how that plays out. The primary in our state is on August 6th. We are very much about civics and engagement, so we encourage everybody to get engaged and vote. And then again, we're hearing nationally about this election is about protecting democracy. We need to save democracy. Well, we agree with that, and voting is the best way to participate and make sure our democracy is strong. Regarding the events I mentioned, we are doing a series across the state called our Summer Solution Series. We have had speaking events already in Bellingham, Tacoma, Whidbey Island, Suncadia near Cle Elum. Those were well attended and a lot of fun for us. It gives us a chance to talk directly with people, answer questions. Next up, on July 30th, we have an event in Yakima, and then July 31st in Wenatchee. And that's with Pam Lewison and Todd. And Chris Corey on our staff will be talking about agriculture issues, budget, taxes, and the environment. And they will also answer questions about those 4 ballot initiatives that I mentioned. And then beyond that, our Young Professionals program has summer social events in Spokane in August, and then in Tri-Cities area in mid-August. And then lastly, of course, our fall dinners are coming up. We have speakers for both our Spokane and our Bellevue events. In Bellevue, for example, we have national commentator Molly Hemingway will be speaking, and General Jack Keane, and we are looking forward to a great program, and these events are a lot of fun. We are taking sponsorships right now. Oh, I should mention that in Spokane, we have Dennis Prager as one of our speakers, so that'll be fun. We have table sponsorship and event sponsorships available. We have a dedicated website on this called wpcdinner.com, or if you're interested in sponsorships, you can also contact Maya Espinoza on our staff. So that's our wrap up for what's going on. Normally in the policy world, summertime is supposed to be, quote, the slow period. It never seems to get slow for us, which is fine. We really enjoy it, and we have a lot of activities coming up. Thanks for listening.